Greetings and welcome to Star Trek Discovery Pod, a sometimes funny, trying to be smart podcast covering all things new and classic Trek. I am Myrriah Gossett and I host this podcast. And with me on the view screen, we have someone, Clyde.
I'm Clyde Haynes and I fly the ship.
I'm your yeoman left for dead on an alien planet. Pause to touch it, not bitter at all.
Not bitter at all.
I wondered if we were all going to come in. We didn't talk about it because we never say what we're going to say. But I was wondering, I was kind of hoping that Myrriah was going to say, I am Myrriah Gossett and I fly the ship. And I was like, it's perfect because then I'll say it. And then Paul will feel like he's forced to say it and he'll say it. And it'll be kind of this cool thing. But then it just didn't.
Well, I saw everyone was quoting that line, including my mom texting me that line. So I knew that was the line of the episode. So I was like, we gotta punch it up. And Paul gave me a good punch up while we were waiting in our little ready room, if you will. Obviously tonight we are reviewing and discussing the second season of Strange New Worlds, episode 4, Among the Lotus Eaters, directed by Edward Sanchez, written by Kristen Baer and Davy Perez. Just a couple of reminders and housekeeping before we dig on in. Paul, how can people find this podcast or share it with friends? They've already kind of found it. How can they share it?
Everyone, subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. All links are at StarTrekPod.co. And if you love our content, and we hope you do, please consider being a Patreon supporter for just $2 an episode at patreon.com/StarTrekPod.
Indeed. And Clyde?
One day, I'm just going to change that from patreon.com/StarTrekPod. It's like patreon.com/Paul needs a new car. And I'll see if anyone catches that. And then
just to see, maybe one day our little podcast can pay for a new car. But so far, it's at least paid for some microphones and our web hosting. So,
that's right.
I'll take what we can get. We appreciate y'all's support. It really does actually help us. We cannot do this without your support. Clyde, if people are hanging out with us live tonight, how can we find them in the chat? There's so much going on. What are ways to get our attention?
I mean, I would say just go to your 300 BPS modem, dial up, and find our have
a little
our
tinnitus.
Yeah. No, seriously though, if you're watching us live, if you're hanging out in the chat and you want to participate, then just type capital P, capital O, capital D, capital Pod in the chat. And we'll take a look at your comment here in a moment when we want to know about your thoughts on the show, your overall quick comment. Just type capital H, capital F, capital HF in the chat, and we'll take a look at your thoughts.
Indeed. Well, I do think it is that time for you to put on one of those helmets to make us hopefully remember things. And it is indeed time for some... It's time for some hot frakes. Clyde, what did you think of this episode?
I've been dreading this since I finished the episode.
Interesting.
Not my favorite episode.
Okay.
Here's
the thing. Not all of them are going to be favorites, right? They all can't be favorites. There's got to be some middle ground.
Well, see, and I think that's interesting because that was kind of the expectation when you had 26, 24, 22 episodes a season. When you're talking about 10 to 13, my expectations are a little bit higher, right? Like I'm expecting a little bit more, but this one was good. It didn't move me like the first 3 did. This one was kind of like, interesting. I kind of see where you're going there, but all right. It felt definitely more like an episode that you'd see in when you have 25 episodes or something like that, because it felt like there's always like an amnesia episode in Trek is somewhat where people take a drug or there's a machine that's giving off some radiation that affects people. Myrriah, you and I have been asked to think about some of our top episodes.
Really hard.
And I'm surprised how many times this theme comes up of, this lost experience on this planet. So it falls perfectly in line of this episodic nature. But I keep asking myself, what moved from me from a character? Like, how did the characters move forward for me? What new revelations did I understand or kind of walk away with? How did this move the internal plot for me? And I'm still grasping with that. And I'm hoping by the end of this podcast, you or Paul
you're
are going to
muted,
help
by
me.
the way.
Yeah. You'll help me. You'll help me with that.
Indeed. Paul, now that you're not muted, what did you think of this episode?
Have a voice.
Nope. There.
I have to say that this is probably the best episode I've seen all day. All day. It's the only episode I've seen all day. But I think I think as Clyde said, it's a throwback to the era of they can't all be gems. But to be fair to that, I think in almost every single sci-fi fantasy show, there's a amnesia episode. And there whatever reasons there are for that. I think people like to see their favorite characters without the luxury of their own history. Does that make sense? Who they are inside, and Erica is a pilot inside, that's what it was really about. I kind of feel like this is an Erica episode, even though the time was not set up for that. Yeah, I mean, I think it looked beautiful.
Yeah, it did look great.
I was like, oh my God, this episode looks beautiful.
That AR wall is working really hard.
It's doing some stuff. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. It wasn't as my favorite either, as far as in comparison to three very strong episodes.
So. I wonder. So I'm very middle ground this episode. I thought it looked beautiful. I thought the costumes were fantastic. I'm always so impressed with where we are as Star Trek with what we get to see on screen these days. So I think that's always top of mind for me. I like going back to sort of an origin story for Pike and getting to see some of these moments and returning to this planet. So I thought that was a fun Easter egg, but again, a story that you don't need to know that it's an Easter egg to fully understand the episode, which I appreciate as well. I think what was different, and I'm wondering if this might be the dissonance here for everyone, is this was a Pike episode. And I think, again, Pike is one of the characters that we know the most about. So I think sometimes it's not as exciting to see some of these middle moments for Pike, right? We're seeing his growth as far as his relationship with Batel. And I think, he has some good tete-a-tete with Una at the top about his relationship style. And then he kind of goes through this whole thing about memory and goes through an experience that then informs his decision on how his relationship is going to change there. It felt like a little bit of a bait and switch because I thought this was going to be a much more Ortegas focused episode.
Me too. She's the more she's the more compelling character in this
right.
case.
Right. And I think, and I probably also unfairly put a lot of expectations on this episode because it was a lineup of heavy hitters of people who I enjoy their content. Edward Sanchez directed a bunch of horror films that I love. And Kristen Bayer and David Perez have written a lot of episodes that I also really enjoy. And I think for me, this felt like a 90s thriller versus a current horror or thriller movie. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? The pacing is more of that kind of style.
Sure.
So I think that's where, because it felt like Paul and I were discussing this before we got on the pod, is I really love watching movies that are so bad they come around to being good again. It's probably my favorite genre of film. And
do you have an example?
I watched The Sphere last night, which is, I think falls in that category, right? It is
and The Godfather and Shawshank Redemption, all these terrible movies that become good if you.
But my thing is like those movies, you don't have to 100% pay attention to keep following the plot. And I felt like this was an episode where I didn't 100% have to pay attention to follow the plot, which I think is different from a lot of the other episodes we've had thus far.
Well, that's an interesting thought, because I don't know that I would have articulated it like that, but I did have that feeling too. Like as I'm watching it, I'm kind of like, it's the first time that I felt like, oh, if I need to turn away and do something, I probably can, right? Like I could multitask, where normally I'm so riveted by what's happening and what's about to happen and how beautiful it is and the story driven nature and,
this is
Lon's eyes, that I just have to keep watching. And this one was kind of like, okay.
Well, I feel like, like Ortegas, like when she's on screen, she's captivating. And in this episode, like, she literally talks to you, like with her logs, right? And so I kind of thought this was going to be her episode.
Yeah.
But like a lot of it spent a lot of time on Pike, and without being that way about it, like, Pike's problems seemed pretty like generic. Like, oh, I'm this guy.
Issues, right.
And with good reason. Like, he goes like, oh, I'm hurting your career now too. I'm going to die in 10 years, or like, I'm going to get really messed up in 10 years. Maybe it's too, but like, even if that was the case, I didn't feel it, probably because I look at his, his cabin, and he goes, you have a fireplace in your cabin? Like, how can you have any problems whatsoever?
To your point, Paul, you've just made some really good points that I agree with. So
the fireplace, right? Last
no, that
hot dog in the fireplace.
I mean, his cabin is the sickest cabin I've ever seen a captain have. Period. Point blank. End of sentence.
That sauce looked great. I'm ready for pasta night at Pike's.
That's right.
mean, I'd be at his cabin door knocking every night. Like, hey, what's for dinner? Can I get some? Can I just put a bowl? Like, can I have some? That aside, I think Pike is this hero character that you kind of want to see him do hero stuff.
Sure.
And the expectations for him to be compelling is always strong. But I also look at it and go, you're right. The conflict that he has is pretty generic. Like, at the end of the day, he's doing this whole thing that we've seen 1,000 times before, is like, oh, I've got this inner turmoil and it's hard, so I'm going to spare you by breaking up with you rather than really do it. And I'm like, okay, so if that's what you're going to do it. If you're not going to do it, don't do it, right? So for me, I wasn't that compelled by that whole thing. And I was like, because again, Myrriah, to your point, we know a lot about him. And I'm just going to say it. I'm not that invested in his relationship with this other captain. And the fact that she went after Una the way she did.
It was her job. Like, not fair. She was trying to be cool about it too.
It was her job. And it did cost her something, right? Like, she paid a price ultimately because she didn't get the promotion.
The only one who paid a price.
Which I don't agree with. But it's one of those things where, like, and I'm just going to say it.
Say it.
Look, when you watch The Wonder Years, you want Kevin and Winnie to get together, right? When you watch Boy Meets World, you want Corey and Topanga to get together, right? There's these things that you just like, man, I want them to be together. Like, when it doesn't happen, you're like, this? I'm kind of like, I'm more interested in trying to figure out if Chapel and Spock are going to get together. Like, if the romance, and I thought that we might see with this whole concept of forgetting
and just
this
relying
emotion,
on feelings, right? Yeah.
I thought that maybe there's going to be something that blossoms between, like, something that we were going to get between Chapel and Spock. That would have been compelling to me. This whole love thing and the necklace, it didn't move me the way I thought it was supposed to.
I think also we didn't actually see that much of a character change, right? Like, I feel like we could probably tell he was going to know he messed up the relationship at the top of the episode, right? Like, he was the one who's like, oof, I've done something wrong. And Una already pointed out that what was his flaw, like at the very top of the episode. So then we had no discovery because the flaw was already pointed out at the top. And then the discovery of the character we could have gotten when he's at the end. And I thought it was building something very interesting when Zachariah was like, this planet shows you who you are, and you were about to kill me, right? And I was like, I thought to me that was that moment of like, oh, Pike's going to have a big like, am I a violent person? Like, is this going to have some ramifications? But instead, he's like, no, I was always trying to fight for my crew. This is who I am. This is how I know I'm still who I am, which I was like, I agree. But I was like, did this not implant something in your memory for you to know what you were at your like very primal core, right? Like who you were as a person, that you were willing to do this. But I thought it was a missed opportunity.
Well, one more thing, because you guys have got me thinking like, what was going on in me while I was watching this? Like, why wasn't I responding? Like I was really excited about watching this episode. Like I hadn't seen a screener. Like I was like, man, I'm like, so maybe I put too much pressure on it, but you're helping me understand like what wasn't connecting with me. And here's, I think, the thing that might be the big issue for me is the revelation and the problem of whatever was causing them to forget. There wasn't we have to figure out what's going on. Mm-hmm. We discover what's going on. We solve and resolve what's going on. And then there's this resolution of everybody else. Yeah. Like,
I think because the A plot and the B plot were the same plot. They were both forgetting their memories. Like there was no differentials for what's happening ship to planet.
But if you think about when these things have happened on a TNG and a Voyager or DS9 specifically, there's this whole plot about having to figure out what's going on. Sure. Then you've got to fix the machine. And then you have to talk about, now that the machine has been fixed, what it means for everybody else. And really what we got this kind of throwaway at the very end explanation of what happened. But there wasn't really this discovery of here's the problem and here's how we resolve the problem. It was just kind of like, like I'm a TNG guy. So I want to see Geordi and Data go, sneak around and uncover this thing that's sending out radiation. And I thought we were going to get, it was like, is it something in the volcano or something? It's like, what is it? And then they go, oh, we've got to, do something.
Well, I was thinking of how in TNG, the amnesia episode is, I think it's Conundrum, right? It's where like, they get their minds wiped and they're told to go attack a random alien species that we never see again. But the hook was Ro and Riker hook up. That was like ooh.
Well, I think that's where, to your point, Clyde, it's like we could have had some more moments with Spock and Chapel here, right? If it's all around feelings. And I think that's what I thought was because I was like, okay, you've got like these kind of powerhouses of like horror and thriller on this episode. Like what am I missing here? And it is more of that like Stepford wife feeling of a something that is wrong. It's scary. The idea of losing your memory, that's terrifying, right? The idea that you would forget who you are. These are all very scary concepts. These are all very within the realms of horror. But I think what was missing and is often included in horror movies is that flip side, is like, where is the kind of humor and the funny that can also come from this, right? Like we got some of it, I think, with Ortegas and the computer. Like I found Sassy Computer to be hilarious. Like I thought it was very funny to kind of hear like I was like, I don't know if they directed the voice actor to do it this way. It did make me giggle. Was like, oh, this computer sounds like, oh, come on. Like, how to do this. Just do it. Why do I have to tell you everything? And I thought there could have been more of that. Like you had random people wandering the hallways. It's like, what do you like the Naked Time episode of TOS, right? Like, it's like, where is the absurdity within this world that has happened?
Well, see,
one second.
Go ahead, Paul.
So like, when Ortegas goes down to deck 6 and there's this one guy like on his ass, like I want to see more of him because he had the best extra cameo ever. Because I go like, oh, who is that guy? Because he had that crazy, I'm really messed up, I don't belong here face. That's going like, I love it. Anyway.
Well, no, so I was thinking about that, like, and there's a few episodes, but Naked Time popped in my head, and I felt like there's two ways that you could have gone with this. Naked Time where people are roaming around. Like, I expected to see somebody punch somebody in the hallway. Like,
Right.
who are you?
Because fear, like we see Lon punch Pike in the face, in the cage, right? So
right. So like you have these moments where it's like, what's happening? And then on the other hand, the episode that I was thinking about from TNG is Clues, where the Enterprise is flying along and they're rendered unconscious, but Data's the only one who kind of knows what's going on. And the whole thing was like, so if beings didn't destroy the ship, they, and no one knows about them. They put everybody to sleep, but Data has a positronic brain, so you can't. And you spend the whole time people starting to figure out like something happened and what is it? Like there's this idea of this mystery that has to be solved, and then we solve it and we come to terms. Like I thought that would be one of the two ways that they went, and they went a different way, and it was just kind of leaving me like, but what am I left with? Right? Like I kind of wanted to see something. Like I literally, to me, if you're gonna have an A plot where you take 3 characters and you put them on a planet, at the end of the episode, I should know something about these 3 characters that I did not know at the beginning, right? I should see these 3 characters, at least one of them, in a different light, or one should be eaten by a blob monster, a black oozy gobulous monster.
We're not doing that again.
No, please don't ever do that again. But I'm like...
Yeah. The thing that I did really enjoy about this episode is I felt like it was an interesting commentary on the red shirts, in that there's like this, the stereotype of like of those who are left behind. We often don't mourn them. And I thought it was a great way to kind of bring it into current television, which is Pike is like, no, I did mourn you. It's like things we don't get to see because we only get 10 episodes. Right. And like Pike hasn't had any episodes up until this series. So it's like, no, I did mourn you. We've heard information about you as a person. Like, we're now making you a full person. You're not just a red shirt. And then you kind of see the repercussions of like what happens when care isn't in place for those people. So I thought that was like kind of an interesting commentary that they were making there with Zach's character.
I wanted to see more, actually.
Yeah.
Like, I think that would have been an interesting, like, because we saw him at the beginning and then we saw him at the end. Like, I think there's like, if there was some more where there was some dialogue about like some emotion of like, why'd you leave me? Like, I'm not accepting this, like, or something, like where we really got a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of a monologue or something where we got to hear that whole idea of like this idea of the red shirts. That would have been interesting to me as well. But we didn't get that.
I wouldn't have minded spending some more time with Zach. I did want to ask y'all, I really enjoyed Reed Birney, who is Luke, the guest star on The Planet. I thought he did a great job. I enjoyed him as sort of their shepherd through the episode. He was also really great in The Menu. If y'all have watched The Menu, I thought that was fantastic.
Was he in The Menu?
He was in The Menu. He's the rich couple. Yeah.
With the Who's the Boss lady.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I won't spoil it. But
won't spoil it, but yeah, it's a great movie. But I thought he was great, and I enjoyed the mythology building that they used his character to kind of build. And I did actually really enjoy La'an and Mbenga's kind of relationship building I think we got in this episode. I feel like I've been getting to learn more about them this season, which I have been enjoying, and I think both actors are doing a great job. And they have like their little signal, they do that like thing under their eye, which I thought was like a fun little throwback. But yeah,
to your point though, like I felt like with those two characters in particular, because we know that they have these darker pasts.
Yeah, it was interesting that their fighting never left their memory.
Yeah, and so at the end we see Luke, bent over and having this moment, right? And we get a lot from Luke where he's saying, "I don't like. Clearly, I've blended over the marks. I don't want to remember. Like, I'm hurt." And at the end, he has this moment. That would have been great if we also got something from like Lon or Mbenga, because we know they have these pasts that they don't want to think about, right? And they just kind of like, it was almost like he was like, "Yeah, I feel you," but I was like, no, like dig a little deeper and show me like
especially because Mbenga, we just lost his daughter last season, so it would have been an interesting connection for him and that character to have had like maybe a bit of a moment.
Well, she ascended,
right? But
she's hanging out with the ancients.
I did also there was
I got it, Clyde. That's you on, baby.
I think too, with it being called like, the reference to the Lotus Eaters is obviously Odyssey by Homer, right?
Yeah.
If everyone can
Simpsons?
think back to like high school English class.
Thank you. I'll be here all week.
Oh, good job, Paul. It also had some like I thought Wizard of Oz type moments, which is another kind of example of a similar journey, right? Like someone looking for home and having to make their way through the poppy fields. It's like lots of similar moments here, but it was like both of those have to do with like the consumption of a drug, and this was like something that was inflicted upon them without their knowledge. I guess more like the poppy fields then from the Wizard of Oz. But when Ortegas is looking for home and she's like, I have to follow the path to find home, I was like, oh, this
Yellow Brick Road.
Yeah.
So I didn't make the reference, but that's great. She was like, I want to go home. It's like, yeah.
I think like like there's an idea there, right? Like the idea of like, and they try to do this, like about, is it worthwhile to hold on to your pain and be who you are or be happy, right? Like Luke, that's Luke's journey, right? Like Luke is like, I'm totally happy not remembering because I think that would suck. The forgetting is a gift. I think that's his line, right? And so like I just think there was a lot of concepts trying to be played at once, and the spine of it just didn't quite come together. Like like you could pick like any of the things that we've talked about. If you just pick that and that was the only thing, I feel like people would feel like it's a richer experience. Like I personally would have preferred an Ortegas, because I want to see her. Like I will say this, like there she is. She's in an asteroid field. She's gonna hit a big asteroid, and she goes, "No time!" And phasers on full to dig a hole into an asteroid. Now
it was pretty badass.
It's badass, but like that is some reckless ass shit. I'm not gonna lie.
She's in her feelings. There's no memories to tell her not to do that.
Like how many times have you seen a starship cut a hole in an asteroid? I'll tell you, 0. It explodes the asteroid, or it crashes.
Well, she did that spinny thingy. She threaded the needle.
Wow,
yeah. It definitely had a WWTPD moment for me, right? What would Tom Paris do?
Yeah, sure.
Like it tracked with me. Like it felt in character. And to your point, Myrriah, I was like, she doesn't, like, that's what you do when you don't remember all the reasons not to do something.
Well, I mean,
right?
I will say, like, like you see, like, here's what was on, Star Trek Episode 4, Season 3 Episode 4. Here's how, laser, and then here's how it really ends.
I'll allow it. It was fun to watch.
It's not canon. There we go. How about that? It's not canon.
I mean, you're nitpicking the single coolest moment of the entire episode.
I'm just highlighting it. It goes like, this was a very cool. It made the trailer, and it was one of the reasons why I was so excited. About this season. So it
is a trailer moment for sure.
I'm not crapping on it, but like, did it hold up to scrutiny? I don't know. Does Indy jumping into like a refrigerator hold up to scrutiny? No, it doesn't.
No. It's not a Mythbusters moment,
But now that you got me thinking about it, if we had gotten a little less of the A plot and a lot more of the B plot, this could have been a really fun episode. A little bit more naked than Naked Now.
Yeah.
Like
this would have been hilarious.
Exactly.
Right?
I think what this episode could have done was been like just a comedy episode.
Well, right, because it started to feel that vibe when you have Uhura going to sick bay, and they're like, and then she's like, "Well, I guess it's not the oatmeal," like that's like a very funny line, and I was like, "Oh, like."
Yeah, like it's all it's all the pieces are still there. I just feel like someone might have said like, "Oh, maybe we need to focus on Pike a little."
And I do wonder, because I mean, I've seen some folks chatting talking in the chat about how like some people had like an emotionally hard time watching this episode because it resonates with a lot of folks who've had personal experiences with like memory loss or dementia. And I think that is definitely something I was thinking about while watching this episode. And so I wonder if they were like, oh, we can't go funny because this is very serious. And but I think sometimes when you add the funny, it makes the serious feel more serious. Do you know what I mean? Also because sometimes you have to be able to laugh at some of those things because it does get absurd and it does get really dark. And like, if you can't laugh in the darkness, then like, what's the point of living? For me, at least.
Wow, Myrriah, a little Sherry there, a little Sherry.
I don't know. It's like you got to laugh through some of this shit. It's really hard.
100%.
But what did y'all kind of take away as the core message that they were saying about like the importance of memories versus the importance of like what your gut feeling personhood is? I thought that was kind of the most interesting tension of the plot of this episode.
For me, like, the way I would express it is like, there's the person that you are at your core, and then there's the person that you are to the world. And to the world is basically your implicit or explicit memory, however they describe it, right? Mm-hmm. So take away that filter, and then here's who you truly are. And and I don't think that they really explored that because everyone is literally themselves. And I don't know if most people are like, one of the things that, side note, Paul T, I really like taking a bunch of personality tests just because, I'm so narcissistic that I just really like to see how I rate myself. But one of the most interesting things that I've taken is like a Jungian personality test because I've never taken one before.
What's it called? So just so you know, Paul, outside of Trek, this is what I do all day.
I don't know which one.
Welcome to Personality Quiz Chat, the sub podcast within Hot Dog Chat, coming up after Star Trek Discovery Pod.
And so, like, what was really interesting was like this was the first test that I saw that broke it up to two things. Here is the archetype you're outward facing, and here is the archetype you're in facing. And for me, like, it turned out that my archetypes are in alignment. They are the same in and out. So I expect that I would be pretty much me if I lost my memory. But there are a lot of people, take my wife, who is one thing on the outside and a different type of person.
Does she listen?
My wife is lovely.
I'm gonna start texting episode notes to B.
That's right. My wife is lovely. And I bet you, like, like if you had the memory flip, like then you'd see a different person. And so in that way, or like, I feel like they didn't play with that as much.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think what you're talking about is this idea of who we present ourselves to the world, right? And all it's kind of like who I think I have to be to you for you to like and accept me,
sure.
versus who I am when no one's looking, right? And it's like, oh, and so there's this idea of, to your point, they didn't really play with it, but the idea of who is Pike if he doesn't know the responsibilities that he carries, right?
Yep, exactly.
When you don't have to be captain, when you don't have to have everybody's life in the palm of your hand, how do you act? Who do you act like? And for M'Benga, you're the doctor, right? Right. And I think what we saw with Pike is Pike was who Pike was.
And M'Benga was M'Benga.
Yeah, but the thing about it is M'Benga would have been really interesting because we know he's got this. We've seen it from the pilot or the premiere episode this season.
The murder side.
He's got this murder side. He's got this dark side where he pops a pill and he goes litmus, you know what I'm saying? Or limitless, right? I mean, that would have been interesting to see.
Yeah. And that was an interesting moment, I thought, for M'Benga was when he was like, you never hear about a doctor being taken down for his combat skills.
Yeah.
You know, like it's something I think he is having to toil with, is this idea that he is a healer, but he is deadly, right? And like the idea that his skill set in that regard is it more useful than him being a doctor? I think that's something that would have been interesting to have explored.
But my favorite, but think about it. Here's a crew of 300 people, and the badass ass people are the security officer, the
captain, and the doctor. I mean, I'm here for it. It's great.
It's just a very specific, like out of 300 people, those are the three that are murderers. I love it.
Just where's Lon's people at those? Like, she's department of one.
She's a security department of one. That's what it is.
What happens when she takes a nap?
Where's all the rest of her baby bears? You know,
that's why it's a very small department.
Because we're gonna get to the same Enterprise, right, under Kirk, and all of a sudden you have this limitless group of security officers that never make it off the away team planet. Like,
sure. No, I hear it.
Yeah, I did. One of y'all brought up in a TNG episode about how Data was essentially unaffected by the memory loss, and I thought that would have been interesting. For a second I thought maybe Spock was going to be unaffected, or even Una, because of her genetic modifications. And I thought it would have maybe helped with that comedic ability if you had the straight man, right, to everyone's 100%. Absurdity. But I think really what this episode was needing, as far as like an additional security officer, was Peanut Hamper.
Thank you. Oh, we're on the same page, Myrriah.
I think Peanut Hamper really could have come in handy, because I don't think she would have been affected by the radiation. I mean, she's just floating in space all of the time.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Or she would have the appropriately adjusted field harmonics.
Yeah, exactly.
To your point, like, I also think
There's no point there, Clyde.
No. I mean, I'm moving on from Peanut Hamper. I'm gonna take that. I'm taking that whooping like a man and just take it. You got me. I didn't see it coming again this week. I'm on that. You got me. No, but I think the comedic timing, I think, Paul, I want to go back to something you said earlier around Riker and Rolaren hooking up. I think that's the thing. It's like in this moment, right? If you forget, one of the things that is supposed to happen is that the
inhibitions should go out the window, right?
The inhibitions that you have about expressing that attraction, affection that you have for somebody that you're not supposed to goes away, and then you act on it, right?
All I'm going to ask
is like zero of that,
100%,
like none.
But if we ever get like memory wiped over, please don't fall in love with me.
I don't know, Paul.
Either of you, please don't fall in love with me.
Challenging. No promises, buddy.
I did want to also kind of bring up the way that they sort of wrote around the memory loss inside of the castle, that it was made up of this ore.
Yep.
My only problem with that is Pike starts getting the earache while they're in the castle at the top of the episode, and then it goes away. And I was like, well, I guess it could be like
delayed
residual, like delayed from being outside for so long. But I was like, oh, this seems and I didn't really pick up on it until my second watch. And then I was like, oh, wait a second, why is this happening in the castle? But I thought that was interesting. And the same thing with the helmets. I thought that could have, again, like, I think I wanted someone to have figured out something earlier in the episode to see a bit of that puzzle solving, so that they could have like stolen helmets from the guards and like left some more room, I think, for that more like subject exploration, rather than like, we're going to get from point A to point B at the end of this episode.
Here's what I'm struggling with that I can't quite figure out. I remember when it started, I was like, oh man, 55 minutes. We got a full 55 minutes. Like, that's great. No commercials, straight 55 minutes. Now I'm trying to figure out, where did that time go exactly? How was that time spent? Like,
well, see, you were subjected to the radiation, Clyde, and you time jump. You lost time there.
We did lose time.
Well, I have a thought, not about pivoting a little bit. So, like, I feel like in this particular episode, they're trying to give Pike something to deal with, like, just like oh, his commitment issues was what they chose. But like, I put myself in Pike's shoes, and if I knew that I'm not gonna die or like get really maimed in 10 years, like, I'm crazy. Like, I'm never gonna get. I go into battle because I'm not gonna get hurt. I'm not gonna, like I'm, and so like there's no like Pike isn't dealing with anything like like oh I'm immortal basically.
I feel like it's still a bit of a risk though, because it's like, just because that is and I feel like we talked about this a lot last season, was like, even though the crystal is supposed to show him exactly what his future holds, it's like, do you really want to put that up to chance that something isn't? It's like, with so much time travel and timey-wimey bullshit that happens in this galaxy, it's like, what if that changed in some way? Or
but with the end of season 1, like with the last episode, like he's pretty resolved about it, because he knows that like if I don't do this, like things aren't going to change. It needs to happen this way, kind of thing. So I'm just saying, like there are things to explore. I don't know if his commitment issues would have been my first choice.
I see what you're saying, though, Paul. You're saying if you were in Pike's shoes, you're like, man, I got 10 years. You're just wilding out. You're going into battle with like a fork and be like, right. You're not gonna kill me.
That's right.
But I think it is then still putting your crew at risk, though, if you are being that.
But that would be the problem, right? Like Uno would go like, Captain, you're being reckless. Mm-hmm. Like and there was like a similar episode in Voyager with this, not because like B'Elanna was immortal, but like she was feeling really numb, mm-hmm. and she started doing that like stratosphere diving in the holodeck without the safeties on, and because she's like she's feeling guilty or whatever that was, but like but like that numbness and needing to feel alive, like that's a thing that I assume like people who are damaged a certain way feel, and I haven't experienced that because I'm a scaredy cat. But like that's not what we're talking about here, guys. We're not talking about that right now. We're talking about Star Trek or hot dogs.
Or peanut hamper.
Or peanut and hampers.
Or personality tests.
That's right. This is what we're here for. We're not talking about my issues here.
Brian has a funny comment. Spock could have made the old Spock helmet toy with the flashing light on top of his head to stop the memory loss. He could have wrote his name so he remembered. Perfect toy tie-in. That would have been funny. Nicole, hot freak, don't throw stuff at me, but can Pike's future be changed? I know it's canon, but it's a story, so maybe. I think that's always going to be the question of this series, right?
Yes. Like we'll see. Like no one knows what the writers will do, but like I think that they're like. Do you ever watch that Doctor Who episode where
I don't watch Doctor Who?
Okay,
there's like 40 years of Doctor Who. You're gonna have to be a little bit more specific.
I'm trying to be more specific, Clyde. There's a show called where you have Doctor Who split off into two, and like one ends up with the girl. It's this David Tennant episode.
Thank you. I was gonna say you got to start off Doctor Who with Who the Doctor.
Yes. So maybe there'll be a version where Pike gets split off, kind of like I don't know, but like Pike has a fairly happy ending. He becomes like a stud for an alien race of mind people. That's his ending, by the way. Not to
spoiler alert.
Yeah, that's right. Like, literally a 30-year spoiler.
I think I just lost my train of thought. Where was I going with this? Y'all keep talking. I'll figure it out where I was going.
Look, I don't know if we can change Pike. I'm hopeful. I don't know. I mean, this collection of shows has done so much timey-wimey stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
we know we're getting more as soon as the Lower Decks crew shows up too.
Yeah. I mean, look, what is it? Like, I felt like Discovery did timey-wimey stuff every 3 episodes, right? Like, literally, that they did a Mirrorverse twice, right? You had a big door. Like,
I was going to say
Discovery could have been called Discover the Timey-Wimey episodes.
I think I am ready for either like a holodeck episode, or I'm ready for a Mirrorverse episode. I feel like I need some Mirrorverse of these characters very soon.
So I'm with you. I definitely want a Mirrorverse, but you know what? Also, I could want like they went back in time, but they didn't go back in time enough, right? Like I feel like I mean, we've already gotten one kind of Shakespearean episode, but like, can I get something like I need like a Gangster Planet episode, right? With like Tommy guns and casinos and
I guess that is a good question. I don't think this Enterprise has a holodeck, so we are missing that. But we have seen, last season we got the like Renaissance storybook episode, which I thought was like their version of a holodeck episode, right?
Sure. Like I don't know. I like you made a point earlier, Clyde. Like I kind of, and this is okay. Please don't throw phaser set to stun people. Like I kind of hope that Pike ends up with his fate without trying. Like he just takes it. Like I not to say that is great for him, but like I think there's something to be said about like, oh, I'm going to face my fate with dignity.
Let me ask you. This is not a question I've asked before, but I'm kind of curious. Let's say for whatever reason the ratings stay high enough that this becomes a product, a franchise that they don't want to end.
7
right?
seasons, yeah,
or 10 or whatever, right? Like it's gonna go a while. Would you guys?
The next Yellowstone.
Yeah, really. Would you guys be
yellow shirts?
Yellow shirts.
Would you be open to them having Pike die in his fate and basically rebooting TOS with Not My Kirk?
Damn,
I'd be fine with it.
I'd watch that, but like but I watch all Star Trek. But like I think of that, Clyde. I think of like the last episode of this season, and not season, this series, and like I have this vision of like it's the day that Pike, is going to, and like
I mean, they have like their last episode written already. You know what I mean? Like,
do they? I don't know. Like, the idea of like Pike dealing with that day, the day where I feel like it would bring people to tears. It'd be a great way to end the series. Hopefully that's 5 years from now as opposed to next week, but who knows? Streamers, pay your writers.
Yes, please pay your writers. Good Lord.
Yes, please do.
But I that's an interesting question, Clyde. I mean, I think I don't think then it would be Strange New Worlds. Then it would just be like whatever the next one is, right? Like we got the spinoff from Discovery to get Strange New Worlds. I think the correct ending to Strange New Worlds is the ending of Pike's time on the Enterprise. And or at least like the ending that we have seen. And is there the possibility that they fully reboot the original series? Sure. But I think there's like, some more exciting stuff coming down the pipeline with like the Academy series and what other spinoffs we'll get from Disco that I hope I get to see maybe more than a full reboot of the original series.
I mean, I'm looking at it and going, you've got Kirk, you've got Uhura, you've got Chapel, you've got Spock, right? Like you've got a core there, right? You go out and find a Bones, a Scotty, and a Sulu.
Oh my.
And yeah, you're kind of like, not to mention you can decide if you want to redo some of these 1970s episodes and bring them up to date. So you have you're not starting from zero, right? Or you can create brand new episodes. And look, everybody in the chat is saying the same thing. Like regardless of whether or not you like Not My Kirk, right? Or New Kirk, or New Kirk's growing on me, or however you said it. Everybody's saying the same thing. They're saying, I'd watch. Right?
I'd watch.
Right.
I'd watch. Everyone who's listening to this podcast is going to watch. I don't want to speak for people, but like,
right. I mean, of course, if that's what they did, of course I would watch. But do I think it's more exciting creatively to play in the established world with new characters and new intellectual property? Like I find that more exciting, but yeah.
For example, like my favorite newer Star Wars movie, Rogue One, because like right, because it's fresh. My favorite like series, like is Andor. Why? Because it's fresh and great storytelling. Like we don't have to like be bound to the pillars of our legends, the legends that we have in our lives. The myth. I would love to see just the world being explored, because Star Trek is not Kirk. Star Trek is not Spock. Right. Star Trek is the universe that it created.
Yeah. Like, I'm still waiting. I want a full Klingon show. I've been talking about this for years on this podcast, is that I want a Soprano-style family drama.
Yeah. Patak Dex. Patak Dex.
Family drama set in the Klingon Empire.
Yes.
That's right.
That's all I want.
Mortok, House of Honor.
House of Honor. Incredible. I'm ready.
Of Blood and Steel. It's all there. It's all there.
Yeah.
It's all there.
I mean, could I get like a Friends style Star Trek episode? Like not an episode, but a series where you just got a bunch of it's
called Lower Decks.
We might get.
It is called Lower Decks. Yeah,
I feel like we also might get that a bit in Academy, right? It's like lower stakes when you're at the Academy. I also want Prodigy to be saved. There's shows that I want to see.
What I'm looking forward to is when the Academy show comes on and it's airing, and then all of a sudden there's a time travel episode.
Yeah.
Because everyone in the whole of Star Trek has one time or another deals with time travel. Apparently, the whole everyone.
Course.
But or Mirrorverse or whatever. But I don't know. I think like there's so much. The world is so rich. Like I would like to see, like if there's like an intrigue, I would like to see a Romulan show, because like Romulans, they're like sneaky Vulcans. I mean,
more murder nuns.
Yeah, exactly. And murder nuns, sneaky Vulcans and murder nuns. I mean, like that's worth something.
So what you're saying, Paul, is you need a Lara spinoff. Is that what you're saying?
I would watch it. I would.
Not for nothing. A Laris prequel.
Well, right?
Here a Picard prequel about Laris.
Star Trek. That whole How Shi'ar. Done. Done.
Well, I think, and to everyone's point too, is like, I like that we've jumped to the 32nd century, right? And that is definitely the space to continue in a lot of ways, because then you don't have to worry about canon, because you're literally creating it all from scratch, but you have the history and the lore to kind of play with. Do y'all have anything else you want to say about this particular episode?
I think something that is not said enough, and it hasn't been, in any of the new Star Treks, is a castle. I haven't seen a castle.
I did love that. That was the castle looked incredible, and I love that they referenced the original matte painting, which looked beautiful in the original series.
So I thought that was hilarious, because I'm like, oh, that's what I missed from TOS. Castles.
Who doesn't want a castle?
They're always in a castle or a dungeon, because that's what they had on stock, and I go oh, let's do it.
Yeah. But yeah, big props to the production design and costume department, because everything, it looked like we said at the top. I think Clyde, you said at the top of this episode, it was beautiful to look at. Or Paul, I think.
I thought I agree. I also thought you had some cool ship stuff. I thought that the asteroids hitting
or caves.
I thought that was really done well. I felt like the rhythm of the asteroids hitting the ship.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that tempo and the way that it was executed, everything to me, I'm sorry, but everything on the ship was just really done well.
Yeah.
Right. I guess that's what I was.
You don't have to apologize. That's exactly what it should be. Everything should be that quality.
Yeah, it was just done really well, and I was like, wow. And yeah, when she opened that, to reiterate, when Ortega's opened the sixth floor and you saw those people, I was just like, stay here, because this is gold.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I could feel you have no idea where you are, what's going on, and you feel lost, and you step out into this world and you see all these people moving around. I felt that. That was a great moment. I just more of that, please.
But if there's a mirror universe, one time, I bet Chapel will be like Killy.
Oh, I'm ready for Killy style Chapel.
Yeah.
yeah, next week looks interesting. I think it's once again we're exploring Spock being biracial in a way that looks probably problematic from what I can see. So we'll see how next week goes.
It's fun to watch problematic Spock, you know.
Oh, Spock, poor Spock. But yeah, I think that's all I had for this episode. I continue to be excited for this season. I'm waiting on bated breath for a crossover episode. It's truly the thing that brings me joy to think about. And we posted online today, but Clyde and I's panel that we're on for Comic-Con was officially announced. It is on the schedule. You can check that out. It's going to be very fun and exciting. So please join us on Thursday during Comic-Con. It's going to be a great time. We'll continue to post on socials about it. And if you all would like to do a meetup during that time, let us know too. We'll try to figure out something that we can all do together. It will be a great time. We will be back next week to talk more Strange New Worlds. You can subscribe, rate, and review on Apple, Spotify, and more. Visit StarTrekPod.co to find links into our Patreon. Clyde, where can people hit us up on Twitter? And I think we're going to get I'm going to try to get us over on Threads. I think that's the new,
that's right.
The new thing. The new shebang. I got to figure out our Instagram password, but I'll figure it out.
Well, right now, you're going to head over to Twitter. You can hit us up at Star Trek Pod.
Indeed. Thanks, Karen, for helping us run everything over there on that dumpster fire of a website. We will see you all next week. Live long and prosper. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.